I'm Angela Morabito with Campus Reform, and you're watching 5 Big Questions. Today, I'm joined by Professor Ben Ginsberg, who is the chair of the Center for Advanced Governmental Studies at Johns Hopkins University. He researches American politics and higher education policy. Professor Ginsberg, thank you for being here.
Oh, I'm delighted to be here, and I'm always happy to talk about and criticize higher education.
Well, we are delighted to have you, so we'll jump right in here. You've written extensively about the rise of college administrators and how there's just so many of them. How do you believe the growth in administrative positions is changing the college experience for students?
Well, I think we have evolved what I like to call the all-administrative university. You probably know this, Angela, but there are now more deans, deanlets, deanlings, ding-a-lings, and ding-dongs than there are faculty members. So for parents out there, when you send your kid to college, you can be sure that they'll be able to work with a dean of some sort, perhaps attend, ding-dong school, I'm not sure. But these administrators, many of them have never been faculty, have never set foot in a classroom, but they want to take charge of everything and explain to the faculty how to teach. And, from an administrative perspective, one professor is pretty much the same as another, since many of the administrators couldn't tell you the difference between chemistry and history. I once had an experience of trying to add 2 sections to an international politics class in one of my programs. And so I went to I don't know if he was a deanlet or a deanling, something, to ask for some money to pay for 2 more instructors. And he said to me, well, wait a minute, there are empty classes in other programs. You should direct the students to take those classes. I said, you mean like biotechnology or writing? And he said, well, yeah, those would be 2 possibilities. Now, it was clear he didn't know the difference between one topic and another and thought, there's an empty seat in this classroom, so take that student's butt and put it in the seat and don't ask me for more money. Well, I wasn't even shocked by this because very often this is how administrators think. Most are not academics. They don't understand teaching. Students are customers. Faculty are cost factors. And don't you want to have more customers and fewer cost factors? That's administrative thought. How did we ever get here? 25 years ago, there were more professors, but I think twice as many professors as administrators. And many studies have shown that ideally in a university, you would have about 1 administrator for every 3 professors. But we've reversed that. We have 3 administrators for every professor. I don't even know what they do. When I walk into an administrative building, it's usually empty. They must be off on retreat. I think they retreat a lot. The last time I was invited to go on retreat, I said, I don't want to go on retreat. I want to move forward. And no one ever invited me again. I don't know. Things I say apparently offend people. But one reason that we have so many administrators, now, the official line on this is that universities have had to staff up because of external factors. For example, government mandates. Now, I don't like government mandates any more than any other right-thinking person should, but it's just not true. The real reason that universities have expanded their administrative capabilities is because they could. They could because they got a lot more money. And where did that money come from? Well, a lot of it came from what I would think is a kind of criminal enterprise, the direct student loan program. Universities have lobbied vigorously for decades to always increase the amount of money that students and their parents can borrow. And here's a question for everyone. What do you think universities and colleges do when the federal student loan limit is raised?
Well, I think they know that all their customers' budgets just went up by however much the amount was raised.
Yes, that's it. You got it. You get an A.
All right.
They raise their tuitions. The direct student loan is a pass-through. It doesn't benefit the customer. It goes directly to the service provider. And in many cases, so they were awash in money, a lot of it from these in my view, fraudulent loans. And what did they use that money to do? Did they hire more professors? No, they hired more administrators, because in the administrative world, more is for sure better. You know, your rank as an administrator depends on the number of people who report to you, your direct reports. And also the amount of work you do is lessened if there are more people in your office. So, you know, universities staffed up using the money that they were bringing in through direct, you know, through federal loans. Now, you know, you and I know that in many cases, students and their parents paid huge amounts of money, acquired huge amounts of debt to get degrees that had no market value. I'm sure somewhere out there you could get a degree in underwater basket weaving. And, you know, you think I joke, I'm going to look, there is probably a program in underwater basket weaving. And many, you know, many programs are very nice, but you shouldn't be borrowing money for them, because you can never repay the money. And now we have, you know, the debt crisis, and the taxpayer is being asked to bail out all of these loans. Now, I have a plan. You want to hear my plan for this?
I would love to.
All right. What did we do when people benefited from Bernie Madoff's Ponzi scheme? We instituted a program of clawbacks. So I think that the colleges that really fraudulently took in all this money should be first in line to pay some of it back. And I think the legal clawback procedure with appointed referees to determine how much culpability each school had and get the money back. How would that work out?
Well, it's certainly a very interesting proposal. And, you know, I hear this concern that you have for protecting the students. And right now we're heading into college application season. Everybody just headed back to school not too long ago. What would your advice be to students who are running up against these issues in college of maybe it's not preparing you for the workforce, maybe you can't take the classes that would prepare you for the workforce or enrich your education in some way? Do students have any power here?
Well, students have a lot of power, and students, you know, students and their parents need to look very carefully when they choose a school. And they should, you know, in a way, it's like buying a car. Turn off your ears to the salesperson's sales pitch and look very carefully at the product. Look at evaluations. And when choosing colleges, I would advise people to speak to actual faculty members rather than to deanlets and deanlings. I'll tell you a story. Years ago, I had a student and his parents arrive in my office. This was an incoming freshman, and they seemed like perfectly nice people. And so we were chatting, and I said to the kid, "What are you planning to study?" The parents broke in, and his mother said, "Well, Johnny is a really, really strong water polo player. And one of the reasons that he came to Hopkins was because of its strong water polo team." I thought, really? I didn't know we had a water polo team, but okay. I mean, it sounds like fun. You splash around in the pool. What could be bad about that, right? Yeah, we all like that. So I said, okay, well, that's wonderful. But be sure you don't spend too much time on it, because this is a tough school. Okay, we haven't lowered our grading that much. You know, this is a tough school, and you really need to work hard. So you have to limit your time in the swimming pool. Well, they all looked stricken. And the mother said, "Well, we just came from a meeting with Dean somebody or other who said, pursue your passions." I said, "Really?" I said, "Well, if your passion is calculus, that's great. But if your passion is water polo, you know, give me a break." Well, they stormed out. Fast forward 3.5 years, the kid is now graduating. He did really well on the water polo team, but it turned out water polo, we were very competitive, and it was a travel team, and our chief rival was Stanford. So he spent a lot of time on the West Coast, and his grades were, pardon my saying this, really sucky. So what's he going to do now? So the parents say, "What do you recommend that he should do?" "Oh, I don't know. I would recommend that you should have not listened to Dean so-and-so 3.5 years ago, paid attention to what I told you. And I think this is a common problem because to the faculty, these kids are students, and students aren't exactly consumers. I'm a libertarian. I believe in 19th century economics, but even Adam Smith knew that students weren't consumers. They hadn't yet been educated to the level needed by consumers. We know that on the faculty. They come to learn, they come to be advised, they come to be pointed in a direction that might be useful to them in life. But to the deanlets, they're just customers, and customers need to be happy. Pursue your passion. So I think that's one downside of what I would now call the all administrative university. It does a disservice to the students when it allows them to borrow huge amounts of money, encourages them to borrow huge amounts of money to study things that aren't remunerative. And then when it points them in weird directions, pursue your passions. Would you tell your little kid, pursue your passions? No, my kid, I was telling my granddaughter, get out of the sandbox. That was her passion. I wasn't going to encourage her to pursue it. And, 17-year-old undergraduates don't know anything. They need to be taught. So that's part of the downside. Another part of the downside of the growth of administration is this incredible burst of virtue signaling that we see from university presidents these days. Now, some of them have an actual commitment to the causes they espouse, or so I'm told. I've never actually met one, but most of them, are kind of ambitious bureaucrats. They want to make more money and get better jobs, and they're part of the reason that universities have such crazy politics. Because on a university campus, there isn't much of a right. The middle wants to do its work, and there's a well-organized left. So university presidents in particular cater to every impulse on the left because that's the safe thing to do. If you fight it out with them, you're not going to get the next job. So whatever crazy thing they come up with, university presidents say, oh yes, and I'm even more for that than you are. So, with all due respect to Johns Hopkins president, I would say that presidents just signal their virtue beyond any rationality. Some really poor historical research seemed to suggest that Johns Hopkins was an enslaver. Now, Johns Hopkins was a Quaker abolitionist, really, and the evidence that Johns Hopkins had enslaved anyone was ridiculous. And a little bit of subsequent research showed that it just wasn't true. But our president jumped on this. He could signal his virtue by removing poor old Johns Hopkins statue from Johns Hopkins University. I don't know where they put it. I hope they saved it, for when he can be brought back. But this is just an example of the silliness of administration and how it exacerbates the silliness of the campus.
That's remarkable about these university presidents. And I know, Professor Ginsberg, you've called them captains of the Titanic, and that is just
yes.
such a powerful visual. Do you think, like the Titanic, the ship's going down and you can't stop it, or is there a way for them to correct course?
Well, I think the ship, large portions of the fleet are going down. A lot of colleges and universities that we see today are not going to be here 10 years from now. If they can't constantly increase the amount of money students can borrow, that's the Ponzi scheme part of it. So they're the Bernie Madoffs of I should have called them the Bernie Madoffs of higher education. Schools are going to go under. And also, a lot of education has moved online. Now, I was very suspicious of this initially because administrators liked it. They thought it would be a cost saving. It's not really much of a cost saving, but what it does do is nationalize instructional competition. So let's say that, let's take a mythical college. I'm going to call it St. Aloysius by the Swamp. Now, St. Aloysius depends for its students on the local catchment area, right? Kids who live within 25 miles and can drive or take the bus or whatever. So that's how it stays alive. And it encourages those kids to borrow far more than they can afford. So that's how St. Aloysius thrives. However, if St. Aloysius is now being subjected to a double whammy. First of all, the direct student loan program is under attack. And the amount kids can borrow is not going to be raised very soon. And second, because of online instruction, those same students can take classes just about anywhere. They don't have to depend on St. Aloysius. They can do classes on Zoom, Blackboard, some combination of online instruction, and get a degree from a better school for less money. So that's going to be the undoing of a lot of schools. You know, a few years ago, academic administrators thought, wow, online, this is going to be great. We're going to be able to shed faculty. But it's going to turn out that they will be the losers. I once did a piece tongue-in-cheek for the Manhattan Institute. And in my piece, I advocated getting rid of all the provosts at all the schools, maybe 5,000 provosts, and hiring one big provost, because all the provosts do the same thing every day and they copy one another. They call it best practices. So why do you need 5,000 of them? Have one provost make the decisions. It would be the same thing. Well, we're gonna come to that because we don't really need all these colleges. Many will go under. Now their faculty will continue, but they'll be freelancing and teaching for more than one school. They used to be called, what was the term? Expressway, something or others. They would drive around from school to school, but electronically, it's easy to do that. So I can imagine a world with fewer colleges, fewer administrators, and more actual professors providing instruction electronically. And, you know, that's not a horrible world.
It's almost like you're watching universities kind of hollow themselves out with all these administrators along the periphery and the faculty in the middle kind of being neglected. So you mentioned something earlier about schools that aren't preparing students to go out into the world. And your 2018 research on this was just fascinating to me about how little people know about their state governments. You found that more than half of respondents didn't even know if their state had a
I'm so glad you read that book. You know, I love that book. I had so much fun with it. And it didn't surprise me. You know, people don't know much about state government, and they should, because the states are really important. But that's for another day. I think, you know, when students go to choose a college, they, and really their parents, should be doing a lot of research and should not be listening to salespeople. I remember when my kids were going to college, some years ago, I admit, but we attended a lot of programs that colleges gave to attract students. And the admissions people who do these programs are very glib, and they're perfectly nice people, as most salespeople are. But they were talking about schools that I actually knew about, and it was clear to me that they had no idea what actually went on in those schools. It was just all salesmanship. So I think parents should approach this the way they approach any other purchase. You know, when you buy a house, do you limit yourself to listening to the realtor? Or do you have a home inspector really check it out? When you buy a car, do you just listen to the salesperson, or do you go to Edmunds, Consumer Reports, find out more about that car? And that's what people need to do in the case of colleges. There are a variety of rating services. I would say US News is the worst, but there are a variety of rating services, each of which has something to say about colleges. And you can talk to faculty. Faculty are very honest about their schools. I can tell you everything that's right and wrong about Johns Hopkins, and have told many parents my view on this, and have suggested that they go to other faculty too. Because we're not salespeople. You don't want to come to our school, we don't care. So that's what parents need to do. They're about to spend $1 zillion. So spend some real time figuring out where to go. Don't go on one of the campus tours where they point to pretty buildings. At Hopkins some years ago, they beautified the campus, spent $50 million of Michael Bloomberg's money to put in new shrubs and grass and sidewalks. I guess to him, it wasn't much. The campus did look very nice. The faculty said, why are you spending all this money on shrubs? Wouldn't it be better, to spend it on programming? And the then director of admissions said, look, I agree with you, but unfortunately, when parents come here to look at the school, that's what they look at. And I said in my book, that shouldn't be what they look at. Why don't you have faculty panels where they can talk to faculty members? Well, they didn't like faculty panels because the faculty was too negative, i.e. we told the truth. So if you go on one of these campus visits for prospective students, you may never meet a professor. And I suggest if you go to a school where the campus visit does not have you meeting professors, cross that school off your list, because you are now at an all administrative university.
Wow. What you say about the faculty and your ability to be honest as the professor is something we encounter all the time at campus reform. But normally we're hearing from professors who were silenced in some way, whether it be because of their political views or something they've said about what's going on at their school. Cancel culture comes for faculty pretty hard, and I'm sure that is no surprise to you. But what would you say has to happen for that to be fixed so that faculty not just have a voice, but have a platform for which to use it?
Well, faculty on the whole are a timid group. People don't go into academics because they relish a fight. And it's relatively easy for the university administrators to, cow the faculty. And someone told me that at my university, the Office of Institutional Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion retains 11 lawyers to investigate student complaints. And these complaints can be anonymous phone complaints. So, the faculty is very worried about what they might say. But, look, I have tenure. What's it for? The purpose of tenure is to allow you to speak up. And if they don't like what I say, well, their attorney and my attorney can discuss it at some length. But people, I often tell people, why are you afraid to say X? Do you think the provost won't like you? I like to say, I happen to know the provost already doesn't like you. Say, oh, I have no idea, but usually it's cost-free. And one thing about administrators, you can face them down, because in the world of administration, the career killer, this is a secret, but the career killer in administration is controversy. The trustees expect an administrator to keep the peace on the campus. And the worst thing they can be is controversial. I learned this years ago before I became persona non grata for my writings, I used to be on search committees for various things. And on one search committee for I don't know what it was, a vice dean, some sort of administrator, and the search firm in charge of this was presenting candidates. So one candidate, I happen to know all about this person. I said, this person is really stupid and we shouldn't bring them here. So the head of the search firm said, well, there are a variety of different ways to approach problems. I said, well, yeah, there's a smart way and the stupid way. But being stupid was not a disqualification. Later on in that same search, someone said about another candidate, well, I've heard that this person is really lazy. And the head of the search firm said, well, they're deliberative. They don't like to make decisions prematurely. So now I've learned that stupid and lazy are not disqualifications. So what's a disqualification? One candidate that was suggested by a member of the search committee was rejected by the search firm we had hired because this person was said to be controversial. So that's the killer. Stupid is all right, lazy is all right, but controversial, that's a killer. Now, this works to the advantage of the faculty, right? Because if you're a professor in an academic field, hey, if you're controversial, that's good. You know, if someone writes a review of something I wrote and said, this is terrible, that's okay. I mean, they're wrong, of course, but it's all right. Anything controversial is good. The worst thing is if someone says, well, everybody else has said that too. That's no good for me. But for administrators, it's the reverse. They want to do what everyone else does, best practices. And nobody knows if the practice is even good, much less best, but copying, mindless copying is what they do. But controversial, that's a career killer. So if you want to have a, if you want to back them off, embroil them in controversy. And they back off very quickly. Controversial, bad thing to do.
It's just amazing that is the poison pill that can harm somebody's
poison
career.
Pill. Absolutely.
Unreal. Well, Professor Ginsberg, I cannot thank you enough for taking us inside the inner workings of a university. This is, so much to think about, and we're going to continue tracking these issues.
Good. Well, I'm glad you do. You do a great service because, higher education, for better or worse, is so important in this country.
It is. And we want to see it get better. I used to work at the Department of Ed, and I've seen what higher education can be and how it falls short. So, I mean,
as to your previous question, is it too late? I, years ago was a Trekkie, and I used to love watching Star Trek. And you remember the leader of the Borg used to say, resistance is futile. Well, maybe, but it's too important. So like Captain Picard, we've got to go phaser them.
What a metaphor. That is quite the mental image. Well, Professor Ginsberg, thank you again for answering 5 big questions.
Thank you. Delighted.